Hi, everybody. I imagine that when you hear of an Audubon Society, you might mostly think of bird watchers. And it's true that most members of the Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society like to watch birds. But we do a lot more than just that. My name is Charlie Scheim, and I'm on the board of directors for the Audubon Society. I'd like to spend some time today talking with you and telling you about the things that our Audubon Society does. As you look at this opening slide, there are 4 important words: conservation, education, advocacy, and research. This is much more than just birding. In fact, we view our mission as protecting our natural environment and connecting people with nature to benefit birds and other wildlife through conservation, education, research, and advocacy. We hope that our efforts will help create a healthy world where people and wildlife can thrive and natural resources are protected. This was the beginning. Back in 1968, Elizabeth Feldhusen and Joe Koenig posted a little note in the newspaper, wondering if anybody wanted to join a local chapter of the Audubon Society. Unfortunately, the newspaper seems to have spelled Audubon wrong. Oh well. And a year later, DOAS was given a provisional charter. In this picture, the woman on the left is Elizabeth Feldhusen, who was also our first president, and on the right of her is Doris Bliss, who was our first vice president. John New, who is listed as the Master of Ceremonies, was also one of the key founders of this society. And on the left is someone from National Audubon, Stanley Quickmeyer. For over 50 years, DOAS has tried to connect people with nature, first of all, by field trips. This is one of the first field trips that was sponsored by the new society, a hawk watch with the John Burroughs Natural History Society down in Roxbury. Here's a picture of 2 of our early members on a field trip in 1971. Here's a field trip at the Audubon Sanctuary from back in the 1990s. And at left is John Davis and Joe Richardson, who were 2 of our former presidents. Our sanctuary is up on Franklin Mountain on Grange Hall Road spur. We don't actually own the property. We rent it from the St. James Episcopal Church for just a few dollars a year. It's a wonderful piece of property. It has lots of different ecosystems, a big wetland with water and marsh and cattails, all kinds of stuff, forests and meadows. It's a really great place to hike and bird. There's an old barn that we use as sort of a base station for what we do. There's also the Franklin Mountain Hawk Watch up on the hill. There are lots of trails, as you can see in the lower right, the red, the blue, the yellow, and these are all open to the public. Anyone can come free of charge. Here's a snap of a field trip to Weaver Lake in 2003. As you can see, we don't just walk through the woods. We like to canoe. We drive lots of places to get interesting wildlife. It's a fun thing to do. And it makes people think about how wonderful nature is and how important it is to protect it. We began leading winter eagle trips quite early in our history. This is one from a more recent time, but we have them almost every year, except in this more recent time of COVID. And we drive down to view bald eagles all along the Delaware River. We also run a number of workshops. This was birding by ear at Betty and Wilbur Davis State Park in June 2017. We've done this for 3 or 4 years now. And you can see here's all these people standing in the woods. And this time, rather than just thinking about looking at birds, they're thinking about what are those birds saying? And here's a happy group striking what we all call the standard birders pose. One of our commitments, as I mentioned before, is education. We run monthly society meetings, and at each meeting, we have some speaker who talks about some aspect of nature. It may be birds, or it may be conservation or wildlife, all kinds of things. We also run most summers a summer camp for children, where we hope they'll learn about the wonders of nature. This was one of the first society projects. They ran back in 1971. So at this point, we were only 2 years old. We ran a series of films, 6 of them, throughout that winter. In 1972, DOAS was able to bring Roger Torrey Peterson, who is one of the most famous ornithologists in the world, to Oneonta to narrate his film, Wild Africa Today. He spoke with the audience, and in fact, I'm lucky enough to have a book of his, a field guide, autographed by him at that event. It's really cool. Here's a program about bluebirds, local presenter John Rogers. We get a lot of local people who come and talk about the things that they're interested in, whether it's bluebirds or the American chestnut tree or reptiles. We've even had people come and talk about skeletons that they've found. It's a fascinating thing. Each year we have a charter dinner. It's a meeting where everyone celebrates the fact that we exist and that we got our charter. This one was back in 2010 at the Country Club. And I just want to point out the people here. These are people that were served on our board of directors for quite a long time. Barbara Marsala, Julia Gregory, Bob Donnelly, and Tom Sallow. Tom is still on the board. He's a very active member. We've had an association with Missy Runyon, who's a wildlife rehabilitator at the Friends of the Feathered and Furry Wildlife Center down in Hunter. And she's come each fall to our Franklin Mountain Hawk Watch open house to do a presentation. She always brings various raptors that she might have with her. For example, in this picture, she's holding a red-tailed hawk. And in fact, this hawk is one that she found in this area. Someone found it and called her up, and she picked it up, rehabilitated it, and that day she then let it go into the wild. It was a really neat thing to see this bird take off, land in a tree, look around, and then take off again into the wild. On the right there, she's holding a gray screech owl. And lots of times, people learn unique ways of communicating with wildlife. This was a program in 2017 by Larry Biffero of the DEC about black bears in New York State. It was a very well-attended program, and it was a very popular subject. Here was one on avian migration, Sugunruhe. That's the German word for the migratory restlessness period. That's when birds and other animals feel the need to travel, to migrate. Now, besides our monthly programs, we like I mentioned before, are interested in educating children. We've offered for many years school grants, where teachers in the local school systems can apply and be awarded a few $100s to do interesting things with their classes that are related to nature. We've also run the John New Summer Camp. Remember, John New was in that picture of our Provisional Charter. He's also the person that they named New Island after. He's a noted biologist from SUNY Oneonta, and he was a key player in the beginning of our Audubon Society. One year, the campers built Bluebird boxes with Bruce and Janet Downey. That's them in the background, Bruce and Janice to the right. Another year, campers planted trees with Julie Smith, 1997 that was. We try to get children to do things that will get them to understand and value nature, with the hope that then they, as adults, will become committed to preserving it. Here's a picture from 2014 of Andy Mason and Kate O'Handley, one of our summer staff, leading campers on a walk. Andy is a long-serving board member. He's been on the board for 35 years now and is still very, very active. Conservation is another important principle for the Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society. We want to not only do conservation activities, but we want to be advocates for conservation as well. This is a picture back from 2006 where people were cleaning out the Burlington Wetlands, which is a piece of property that we own. This goes back to near the beginning of the society. There's a picture of Joe Koenig on the left, one of our co-founders, and Betty Rocher at a meeting advocating conservation of water resources. In 2008, there was a big storm, and at a great blue heron rookery over in Hartwick, a bunch of trees fell down, and those trees had old great blue heron nests in them. To encourage the herons to still come back to this rookery anyway, the Audubon built several of these steel tripods on which the herons eventually built nests. It was a pretty neat thing to do and to see the herons come back to them. Tom Sallow earned the Otsego County Conservation Society's Conservationist of the Year Award for his work in the Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society's efforts to inform the public about the health dangers of lead ammunition and to convince hunters to try to switch to non-lead ammunition. Tom has been a hunter for many, many years, and he's been using non-lead ammunition for many, many years. Lead kills. Lead can kill wildlife, eagles, fish, geese, waterfowl. It can kill children, humans. It gets into the deer meat as tiny little fragments when the bullet smashes into the animal. It would be much better if that lead were not in there. People ingest the lead without even knowing it. Tom has been a vocal advocate to try to get folks to switch over to non-lead ammunition. Currently, our society is running the Climate Action Leadership Project. We're trying to help people learn about alternatives to our current carbon-creating lifestyle. You can learn about heat pumps, electric vehicles, composting, lots more. On our website is the Cure 100 Carbon Tracker. Cure 100 stands for Communities United to Reduce Emissions 100%. It is crucial that we stop producing so much carbon. The world is heating up, and it is very adversely affecting our environment. On our website, we have the Carbon Tracker app. You can go there, and as you work your way through this Carbon Tracker app, it will record information about your family and your choices, and then tell you what your carbon footprint is. You can learn how to reduce that carbon footprint in a bunch of different categories. For example, transportation, you could switch to an electric car. For heating your house, you could switch from oil or natural gas to using a heat pump. And you can see there's other categories as well. You can find out all of these information in our webinars that we have linked to on our website. DOS members have been active writers over the years. This was an article about a better approach to waste disposal by Irwin Guin, who was one of our members back in the 90s. This was an article written by Jean Miller, who's our longest serving board member ever at 38 years. And she was a society president for many, many years. Notice, we're still talking about throwaways and how we could reduce the amount of garbage that we create. Every month we publish the Belted Kingfisher, which is our society's newsletter. It has lots of articles about conservation, about the environment, about birds. This is every month is the bird sightings article. It's been edited over the years by Bob Miller, Diane Banco, and currently by Sandy Bright. Another of the important goals for Delaware-Otsego Audubon is research. We believe that by contributing to science, we can help people understand how the environment is being affected and what they can do to affect it positively. One way that we contribute to research is by running our Christmas bird counts. And as you can see, the society started this right away. The first one was in December 1969, and we had only gotten our Provisional Charter back in '68. This data gets sent to the National Audubon Society, and scientists around the world use this citizen science data to find out all sorts of things about our bird populations, and from that to draw implications about the environment and our climate. Here's the second one. In December of 1970, notice there was an article written about it by Elizabeth Feldhusen. She was one of the founders. CBC's Christmas bird counts are usually set up as a circle, and our CBC circle was designed by Joe Koenig and John New. The Oneonta area CBC is a 15-mile diameter circle. It's centered in Milford, and it extends north up to Hartwick and south down into Davenport. It extends west into Lawrence and east over into Maryland. The Audubon has conducted this CBC every December since 1969. So that's over 50 years of data. And we supply that data then to the National Audubon Society. We also organized two other CBCs, the Delaware County CBC, which is centered in Walton, and the Fort Plains CBC. Another big research project for us has been the Golden Eagle Project, which began back in 2007. We began the project by setting up bait piles, which are really just roadkill deer. And we equipped those bait piles with motion-activated cameras. The bait piles attracted eagles, hawks, ravens, all kinds of wildlife. And one of the things that people realize as a result of this is that golden eagles, which don't breed around our area at all, do winter here. And the picture at the top right is of a bald eagle at a bait pile. Below left is a picture of a golden eagle. People didn't know that golden eagles actually lived around here, and they do in pretty good numbers all through the winter. This is an important thing to realize from a conservation point of view. After a few years of just setting up bait piles and taking videos and pictures, we began to trap golden eagles. And we'd put a little transmitter, as you can see on this golden eagle on its back, on the back of the golden. Transmitter is very small compared to the bird, and the bird doesn't even realize it's on there. Here's a picture of one golden eagle that we called Greg, who was captured, measured, and released back in 2014. He was the first one that had one of these GPS trackers on him. And by doing that, we can track where these eagles go. That's an important thing to understand, is where do the eagles go? Where do they live? Where do they breed? And so what you see here is the travels of an eagle who was called Marie. And she traveled as far south as Pennsylvania, all through our area of New York, and on up into Canada, way up here to the Hudson Straits, which is where she bred. And each year she would come back and then go north. Unfortunately, Marie was a victim of lead poisoning. She found a carcass that had lead fragments in it, ingested them, and died. Every season, spring, summer, fall, winter, there are activities at the Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society. We encourage you to join them. And this is a poem that we all really like, by the well-known poet Mary Oliver. I just want to read it to you. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar in my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? We thank you for listening. We also thank our generous sponsors. The most recent is Rod Spangle Antiques down in Unadilla, New York. And we urge you to support the people who support DOAS. I'd like to ask you to think about joining the Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society and adding your voice to our efforts. You can visit our website at www.dos.us, and you can also find us on Facebook. I'd like to thank all those who contributed photos and to our members over all these years. Thank you for listening.